right? Macintosh. Here we go. All right, so this is Charles Rennie Mackintosh is Scottish. So this is, um, he's grouped with Art Nouveau because there's some similar stylistic features. But similar to the way Gaudi is very different from the French and um, Belgians, Mackintosh is different in his own way. So here is some art glass detail. The Willow Tea Room in Glasgow. Not to say I saw chairs like this in the 1980s. I think they were like picking up some of this. Somebody must have been looking at Macintosh. But so here's this idea. Frank Lloyd Wright does this too, and I think Frank Lloyd Wright, Macintosh was known outside of Scotland. Frank Lloyd Wright traveled to Europe, and these like table settings with the very high back chairs that really kind of enclose the space around the table. Um, this is an idea that Macintosh and others had. So one of the features of his, you can see these like little small rectangular perforations in the back of the chair, those little squares. He used that as detail on some of his furniture. And you see the art glass all around. And he designed the pendant lights and these. So electrical lighting was something that the architects and I guess there really isn't such a thing as an interior designer yet. So you get people that did interior decoration, and often like there were architects that would design everything, and this idea of total design was something that was not necessarily practiced by everybody, but I think a lot of the best and most, I guess maybe some of the most creative architects would do this, where they designed the architecture, or like if this is, well, so let's say they designed the architecture, they design the interior so that it functions in a specific way, and then they realize, well, I can't just go buy any furniture. I'm designing the furniture. And how about hardware for doors? Well, you can't just put stock ornament or stock hardware on my doors. I have to design my own everything. And so a lot of them did this. Some stuff that we saw last week, William Morris did that. Macintosh does it. Victor Horta does it. Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright was known, like when he designed a building and it was being built. Sometimes he had a client that would hire him to design a building, and then they would go looking for someone to build it, and they would unroll the plans and blueprints and see his name on it, and it's like roll them back up and say no thanks. That little monster will be on the job site every day. And he would go and make sure they were doing it the way he designed it, because they would take shortcuts, or they would decide like, no one's looking, we'll just do it the way we want to do it. And so there are those architects that cared to design everything. And I think if you designed everything, wouldn't you want to be there to make sure that it got done the way you designed it? I would. I don't care how they feel. I don't care how like how the builder feels about it. Doesn't matter. You're getting paid. This music room in the house for an art lover. This is something that Macintosh designed during his lifetime, but it never got built. But a foundation um, raised money and built it in the 1990s. So it's like Macintosh's architecture to his specifications, but it was built a lot more recently. So if you ever go to Glasgow, check it out. I've never been to Glasgow, so I've never seen this in person, but I would love to. Just so Macintosh's design, his architecture has organic qualities. Are you coming over? Dennis is all riled up about something. I think he's chasing a fly or something. Come here. All right, so you see the organic qualities, these very tall back chairs. I love those. The lights on the ceiling are great. Hey, well, don't stand on the keyboard. What are you doing? Sorry, there's a giant cat in the way. Come here. Get your butt over. Don't go up my stuff. Come here. There. Ready? Go. There must be a ghost in here. He's chasing something that nobody can see, except for him. We'll get it. Dork. Okay, that was exciting. All right, so yeah, there we go. So beautiful. So white, I love like the white interiors. So here's his home, Hill House. He used like wrought iron for like I love this like wrought iron gate. Beautiful stuff. Here's the interior entry hall. So it's his furniture design. Japanese design and Japanese architecture was known and popular throughout Europe and the U.S. The Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893, the most popular um, um, pavilion was the Japanese pavilion, which they built. They built an island in one of the lagoons and built it on the island, and it was meant to. It was a recreation of Japanese domestic architecture. So here, I love this, like the dark beams and the white walls, and like his these like art glass shades on the lights. This is very much like something Frank Lloyd Wright did. So Macintosh and Frank Lloyd Wright really appear to have known about each other. I haven't read any. I mean, I could always stand to read more, but Frank Lloyd Wright was the kind of person that if he was influenced by someone, he would never admit it. Sometimes he did, but usually he like he would go to a party dressed in a kimono and say like, Japanese? What? I am not. Like, all right, cool, whatever you say, man. So I love his like this like checkerboard geometry and organic shape all at once. You won't unfold this. He's lying down on my notes and it folded in half, and he just like just settle on it. All right, wall sconces and interior detail painting. drawing room in Hill House. So this rose motif is something that he used. So this sort of like stylized organic rose motif, geometric shape like the squares, and this is quite beautiful. I really appreciate his use of white. I mean, especially can you imagine after all like the Victorian like dank interiors, you know, a lot of the like these architects, Wright was one of them. Macintosh was one of them. They really just could not tolerate the clutter of Victorian. There's a fireplace surround. So you can see its relationship with the other like the Art Nouveau from France, Belgium, and Spain, right? It's sort of like organic-y stuff. Bedroom. And that ladderback chair of his is awesome and ridiculous all at the same time. A lot taller than it needs to be, unless I guess if you're hanging your plan is to hang a long garment off of it. But why not? With a lot of most things that are designed, um, you know, you don't need to do this. You could design a perfectly functional chair and make it look a lot like other chairs. But if you're designing it, why would you do that? I mean, you want to make something that's unique and that's something that looks like somebody, like a specific person designed it.
But does it look comfortable to sit on?
Ah, comfort, comfort, schmumfort. Sit in it. It's beautiful, and shut your mouth. That is a lot of that is the knock against a lot of modern design is that it is not comfortable, and I think in a lot of cases it deserves it. Frank Lloyd Wright made wood like oak wooden dining tables that had no cushions and that was it is a right angle. It is horizontal seat, vertical back, and good luck if you have to go to a dinner party and you're going to be sitting in that thing for a while. So I think one of the few admissions of you know less than complete success that I ever read from Frank Lloyd Wright is that he admitted at some point, like later in his life, that he never quite resolved furniture. He made some better furniture than the prairie style torture devices, but yeah. But I mean, it's something that I think that with a lot of modern architecture, a lot of modern furniture, um, it's there's a decision being made that this is going to be interesting. I mean, is it going to be interesting and comfortable? Is it going to be interesting or comfortable? Sometimes you just make it look, sometimes it's got to just be cool. All right, so here's the north facade, the Glasgow School of Art. Wrought iron decorative work. Beautiful. So wrought iron over cast iron suggests a certain, um, I guess, a certain interest in like arts and crafts, where it's something like it's more like it's manufactured by a person as opposed to, well, I guess you could mass produce them, but wrought iron and cast iron are a different process. Here is a facade with these, what would have been at the times very modern windows. And so this idea of having these very tall windows where I don't know if you can quite see it, like with steel frame construction, the exterior wall is not load bearing. I mean, that's why in like modern high rises, the exterior surface of a 100-story or taller building is all glass. That's because that's not the structure. The structure is inside, and the glass sits on the sits on the outside, and it just looks like it's this nice, clean, uniform surface. And this is in a way, so like having these like um, big panels of window. I think to me this looks very modern. Here's an interior of the library. Um, Dark and heavy. It looks dungeony in a way. I guess not you know maybe got a little bit of Gaudi in him here. But I do enjoy these. So this is like the pendant lights that hang down very far from the ceiling. Um, this is late 19th, early 20th century. So the electrical lighting is a new thing, and that's Macintosh. And that is all I was planning to talk about tonight with the Art Nouveau. You got the French, Belgian, Spanish, and Scottish. They are associated, like Macintosh is associated with other movements around, like in Europe. Um, there's a group called the Wiener Werkstätte, which is Vienna in Austria, and in Germany there is a group called the Werkbund, Werkbund. Um, they're kind of like the pre-modernists in Germany and Austria, and um, there's a lot of people doing industrial arts, architecture, furniture, um, like art glass, ceramics, that kind of stuff. They're trying to figure out how to use the new industrial processes that are available to them. And it becomes pretty clear that, like, the William Morris Arts and Crafts isn't going to work because they need the ability to make things in larger quantities. Populations are increasing, and there a lot of people are also just interested in the new technology. I mean, like this is pretty common. I mean, right now, it's like the new technology of digital media is pretty hard to resist, and more and more, it's pretty hard to do without it. So, I mean, it is nice to turn things off and go for a walk. Don't bring your phone. For me, artwork. The artwork I do um, is mostly by hand, drawing, printmaking, painting. I do mess around a little bit with some drawing apps on the tablet, but my ability to use those drawing apps comes from the fact that I already learned how to draw and paint, so I know how to use all those different effects. And but still, it's the new technology is cool. I mean, even though you know I do things by I do things that are traditional and by hand. I don't, I'm still very interested in the new technology that we have. So it's true. It was true it was true 100 or more years ago. But they had to figure out. It's like they sort of had to decide how they would use it. All right. Any questions about this stuff? This. No, interesting. You like art? Is Art Nouveau kind of cool? Hmm?
I really like it.
Yeah, Gaudi's one of my favorites. So creative.
Yeah. It's yeah, I appreciate how unusual
Mhm.
his architecture is. It is very sculptural. Similar in a way to someone like Frank Gehry. Are you familiar with Frank Gehry? Anybody?
Mhm.
We're going to look at some Frank Gehry then. All right. Bring this back up here. I will share the screen again. Where are you? Yeah. Okay. Doesn't look like they have a lot of his projects up there. Well, how about 31 spectacular buildings designed by Frank Gehry? So this Walt Disney Concert Hall. There is a certain irrational quality to Frank Gehry's architecture. This Neue Zollhof in Düsseldorf, curving titanium cladding around his buildings. This silly thing, Shot Day Complex in Venice, California, with the gigantic binoculars. This is earlier in his career when he was doing things that were more sort of absurdist and realistic. Okay.
Is he the same guy that did the Sydney Opera House?
No,
Because
that is a different.
that first building looks so similar.
Yeah, he did. Well, if we look at the Guggenheim Bilbao. So Frank Gehry designed the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain. Oh. Mm-hmm. You know what? I just want the architecture. I don't want that. I want to see pictures. There we go. Yeah. Looks like that. There, and it looks like that. There's a very interesting, about a 1 hour documentary called A Constructive Madness, and it is about Frank Gehry working with a client on a residential project. The client is a guy named Peter Lewis, who is the guy who he got Progressive Insurance. He turned Progressive Insurance into the gigantic corporation it is today. It was very small when he started working there. And so Peter Lewis had a ton of money, and he's interested in art and architecture. He was one of the sort of like a strange, like insurance executive who actually was interested in, he had some interesting ideas. And so he met Frank Gehry back in the 1980s, and he's like asked him like to design something for him. And at first it was relatively small, and they started meeting. Hey, quit it! Well, you're still don't bite me. You're sitting in my stuff. Dork. So Peter Lewis gets going on this and starts to enjoy it and say, okay, well, design something original. And they meet over the course of several years, and every time they meet, Frank Gehry's showing Peter Lewis designs for this house, and he's like, no, make it bigger, make it interesting, do something that's never been done before. And so he ended up with something that really leads to this building. And like the models, they go through this documentary goes through all the process of like all the different ideas that Frank Gehry goes through with his architectural team. And it's very interesting. And you'll see early on in the documentary that Peter Lewis is like decides like, well, I don't know, I don't really see myself living in that. But what it does is it like he paid Frank Gehry a whole lot of money for planning that really paid Frank Gehry to like run through all these ideas, because I think he really seriously thought that Peter Lewis was going to have one of these versions of the house built, and he never did. But it seems pretty clear that like this was finished in like the late 1996, I think it was, and the whole process with Peter Lewis happened in the late 80s, early 90s. So check it out. It's called A Constructive Madness. It's narrated by Jeremy Irons, and so there's a certain class to it. So it's meant to look chaotic. It's meant to look like, I mean, it's meant to be sculptural. Frank Gehry starts. Frank Gehry is like around 90 years old now, so he's not doing a whole lot. I don't think, and but he would start with sketches, and just like get a pen and just like he's like got ideas. He starts sketching things out, and he would make a drawing, and then give it to like the people that would make digital drawings, and he'd say, here, make drawings of this, and they would have to like figure out like interpret his sketches and turn them into something that can be made into a solid material. So there's also a good documentary that is Sidney Pollack, who was a Hollywood director. He was friends with Frank Gehry. He designed the movie Out of Africa in the 1980s, or he directed Out of Africa. So he was like a Academy Award winning guy. Sidney Pollack did a documentary of Frank Gehry with Frank Gehry and called it Sketches of Frank Gehry. And some of it is like the two of them going around, and Sidney Pollack has a camera and he's just like talking to Frank Gehry. And it's just very interesting to see like what is like, it's about more about him, about Frank Gehry as a person, and also his architecture and how he arrives at it. So check that stuff out. So that's Frank Gehry. And I think the museum in Bilbao is, I think it's some artists complain that the architecture is like not suitable. Like it's too hard to put work in there. Have for work to go there. Um, but I think some of the better attitude that probably more artists have is that like, well, if my work can't stand up to the architecture, then it probably shouldn't be here, which I think is probably a better point. Okay, any questions about that? Have you been to Millennium Park? Have you seen the big crazy band shell? That's
Yes.
Jack Garrett. He
Okay.
designed that. As a favor to the Pritzkers. It's one of the Pritzkers, one of like J.B. Pritzker's sisters, runs the Pritzker Foundation. The Pritzker family gives out has put a lot of money into architecture, and and the Pritzker Prize is an annual kind of like it's kind of sort of considered to be it's like the biggest architectural award. So I appreciate that. People
Is
put
that a big award just for the city or for the state or
it's international.
international? Okay.
Yeah. So like an architect that wins the Pritzker Prize. Sometimes it's like a lifetime achievement. Sometimes it's like, the greatest architect in the world in 2021 was.
I see.
And of course, everyone fights over like what? You got to be kidding! This is trash.
Of course.
That's the best. That's the best part about being in a creative discipline is like people like you can like they're like this is like garbage. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Because you can like if you have any kind of like education in it and some experience, then you have reason. Then you have a legitimate opinion, or you can claim a legitimate opinion, and then you can like go to parties and like argue about like what's good. That was one of the most fun things in graduate school was like arguing about what's good.
I have stories just from my mom. Like she was up for a couple of Jeff Awards or costumes and
Cool.
yeah, she did a lot of complaining.
Oh yeah. Well, you can't. I mean, sometimes it's like, do you see this? Like, look at this.
Yeah. Why did there come? She only won because she was pregnant. That's what I've heard. Years and years and years.
Yeah.
She had 2 shows up to win but the other woman won and it's only because she was pregnant. I had 2 shows up. I'm like, whatever.
Just it's a crime.
I know.
It's criminal. Yeah. Well, and like even like the Academy Awards,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I think there was like the actor Jack Palance when he won an Academy Award as like Best Supporting Actor for the movie City Slicker or the film City Slickers, which was like a dumb Billy Crystal
Yeah.
fish out of water cowboy like that goes west. It's only because Jack Palance like hadn't won an award for anything, and it's like, the guy's been around like for a long time. It's like we got to give him something. So and there were people mad. It's like he didn't really like. It was like a dumb movie, and he got an award for it. And like everyone knew, it's like it was a lifetime achievement award. Just let him have it. So,
Yeah. Just if somebody has put in that much work at that point, you just let them have it, right?
So yeah, so argument is a part of it. You'll find that. I mean, it's part of the fun. You go and start doing interior design, and you can then go to see some like new stuff, and then you can like it or hate it, and then you can, but at least you'll know why. Like when you have an informed opinion. I remember as a young art student, I would say like, like that sucks. That's like garbage. And at some point, someone asked me like, well, why don't you like it? And then you realize like I have an opinion with no with no foundation. And then like I learned to just like kind of shut up. And then later when you start to learn something, you realize like, oh well, now I can do it. But then you do it less because you learn to respect what it took to make something in the first place.
Right.
So then you're like, oh yeah, I guess it's like the easiest thing in the world is to hate something because you didn't do it. It's like, well, you know, maybe you hate it because you couldn't do it, and you're jealous of the person that it can do it.
Exactly.
So
That's more a reason of why somebody I think hates things.
get off your butt and go learn about it.
Exactly.
Put in some of the work the other person put in.
Right.
So, all right. Anyway, that's enough. See you next week. Yes, I'm working on getting a guest designer, not for this. Well, I think to get like a speaker stipend, I'm going to say it's for this class, but it might have to be on a Tuesday evening. She's an interior designer in Chicago, and I've seen her work on Instagram, and I like it. And so I sent her a message, and she said, "Sure, I'll talk to your students." So it'll be fun. Her work is pretty nice, which is very nice. So I will let you know when that is. I'm just kind of nailing down with her which is the best week, but it would be in like not until after Thanksgiving, just because, you know.
Can we know what her name is?
What's that?
Can we know what her name is? Like, can we look her up?
Oh, yes, Erin Shakoor. It's Shakoor. Erin, Erin Shakoor. Yeah, so you could check out her stuff early, before. And one of the things that I think is most um, helpful for all of you is if you can hear from an interior designer, ask questions of an interior designer, and get some answers to the kinds of things that are hard to learn in school. Like, how do you find a good contractor for construction? How do you find a good painting contractor? How do you know what to charge? All that kind of stuff. And then they tell you what they do, and I think it can be very useful. All right, enjoy the rest of the night.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Hi, thank you.
He just wanted attention.
That's all he wants. My little baby.
Okay.